Let me tell you something right off the bat. Have you ever watched a room full of the brightest engineers in the business get completely outsmarted by a teenage girl with grease on her sleeve and not a trace of fear in her eyes? Because that's exactly what happened. It was a typical high-stakes demo day at Stratton Dynamics, Detroit's crown jewel in automotive tech. Everything was running on schedule until the CEO, Marshall Greystone, stormed in, radiating authority and frustration. The company's prized 12-cylinder prototype, worth more than a few small towns, was dead, completely unresponsive, and no one had a clue why. The room was filled with engineers in spotless suits, whispering in corners, anxious and confused. Meanwhile, Henry Whitaker, the janitor, quietly mopped the floor like the future of the company didn't hinge on this one moment. By the exit stood his daughter, Era, slight, quiet, clutching a worn-out backpack with textbooks and a taped-up notebook poking out the top. She was just waiting for her dad to finish his shift when Marshall, wearing a smirk sharp enough to cut glass, pointed at her and said, "If you can fix this engine, I'll give you a scholarship." The room burst into laughter. Phones came out. People were ready to roast this kid before she even took a step. Henry tried to wave her off, but Era didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, voice barely trembling, and asked if she could touch the engine. Marshall waved her on like it was all a joke, and the crowd circled up, waiting to watch her fail. But instead, she dropped her bag, flipped open her notebook, and suddenly, the room fell silent. The pages were filled with diagrams and notes that looked like they'd been ripped from Stratton's own top-secret files. "How'd she get that?" one engineer whispered. No one dared interrupt as she moved fast, popping open a panel, diving into the wiring, checking a tiny capacitor buried deep in the machine. Then she reached into her backpack, pulled out a part, swapped it in, wiped her hands and said, "Try it now." The lead tech, still half smirking, hit the ignition, and the engine came to life. Perfect. Smooth. Not a single hiccup. The silence that followed was thunderous. Marshall went pale. Something shifted in the air. Surprise, yes, but also fear. Then from the back came the slowest, most unsure clap anyone had ever heard. The applause that followed wasn't pride. It was disbelief, maybe even guilt. Marshall shut it down fast, voice tight. "Who are you?" Era looked to her father, then back at the CEO. "Just someone who loves engines," she said. You could hear a pin drop. Then Donna, a senior engineer, stepped forward, eyes sharp. "That notebook. Where'd you get those designs?" "That's confidential. I drew it," Era answered. Nervous laughter rippled through the room until she flipped to another page, one with a design even more refined than what Stratton had spent millions on. Marshall snatched the notebook, flipping through pages marked in blue ink dated years back. "You designed this at 13? He demanded. "I never said I designed your engine," she replied calmly. "I designed mine. You copied it." Now the whispers turned angry. Henry finally stepped in. "We should go." Marshall, trying to regain control, stepped toward them, but Era stared him down. "Are you detaining us?" she asked. He backed off. Then Henry said, in a voice that hushed the entire room, "You need to listen." And everyone did. "Years ago, there was a genius, my wife, Maren Whitaker, Era's mother. She designed the first version of that engine long before your team took credit. When she tried to speak out, she died in a lab accident, or so they said. I never believed it. All I had left was our daughter, so I ran." The air grew heavy. People began remembering the missing files, the locked labs, the silence around Maren's name. Then one old engineer, Leonard, raised a hand. His voice shook. "I was there. I saw them pull her files. I didn't say anything." Henry's words cut through the shame. "They tried to bury her, but they didn't bury her mind. They didn't bury her blood, and they sure as hell didn't bury this." He pointed to the engine, now humming flawlessly. Marshall, flailing for control, sneered, "You think this makes you important?" But Era just smiled, calm, certain, unshaken. She doesn't flinch. She stands like someone who's already won and says, "You know what makes someone important? The truth." And in that moment, everyone in the room knows it. Even Marshall. The silence that follows isn't awkward or tense this time. It's heavy with awakening. Donna, her jaw clenched, yanks off her company badge and lets it fall to the floor. Leonard follows, face pale but resolute. Marshall's eyes dart around the room like a cornered animal. "You think they'll believe you? You think any of this will stick?" he spits. Era simply holds up her phone, screen aglow. A video. Everything that just happened, the confession, the truth. It already has, she says. By morning, the story is everywhere. It starts on niche tech forums, then floods every social feed, like wildfire. But Stratton Dynamics isn't trending for innovation anymore. It's the cover-up that's lighting up the net. People want answers. They want to know about Era Whitaker. Investigative journalists dig into old patent filings, uncovering her initials, surfacing buried memos, cracking the foundation of Stratton's empire piece by piece. Inside the company's glass-walled headquarters, chaos reigns. Marshall is barricaded in his office, lawyers scrambling, PR teams spinning out in every direction. In the lobby, employees gather wordlessly, watching as the world finally hears the truth they were taught to forget. Meanwhile, in a quiet break room lit by flickering fluorescents, Henry and Era sit together. The low hum of vending machines buzzes behind them, while news anchors dissect their story like it's the plot of a summer blockbuster. "I never thought it would actually come to this," Henry says, almost to himself. "Me neither," Era replies softly. "All I wanted today was to play the violin." She looks at him, eyes glinting with something between sorrow and strength. "But I realized I'm not just her daughter. I'm her voice. Someone had to speak for her." Just then, a sharp knock echoes down the hallway. Federal agents in blue jackets stride in, focused and silent, heading straight for the executive floor. 20 minutes later, Marshall Greystone is led out in handcuffs. The building erupts, not into chaos, but catharsis. Some cheer, some cry. Most just stand in awe, watching the man who ruled through silence finally be silenced. Outside, reporters surge forward. Cameras flash. Microphones stretch like reaching hands. Era stands on the steps beside Henry. He nudges her gently. "You should say something. They're waiting." She steps forward, voice clear and unwavering. "My mother built something beautiful. They tried to bury it, but the truth rises. Even if it takes years, even if it takes her daughter. This isn't about revenge, it's about justice." The crowd falls completely still, suspended between an ending and a beginning. Then, just as it feels like the final chapter, a limousine glides to the curb, sleek, silent, dignified. From it steps a tall woman in an emerald coat, her silver, hair gleaming under the streetlights. Her presence commands attention. Olivia Whitaker, Era's grandmother. They've never met, only heard stories, but in that instant, blood knows blood. Olivia presses a folder into Era's hands. Inside, a letter from U.S. senators announcing the launch of the Whitaker program, a federally funded research center, with Era at the helm. For the first time, Era isn't just standing against something, she's standing for something. For her mother, for her family's stolen legacy, for every voice that was ever silenced. That night, she finally plays her violin, at the same community center her mother once supported. The notes rise, trembling and pure, a song for Marine, for herself, for everyone who's ever been told to be quiet. When she finishes, no one claps. No one moves. They just sit in reverent silence. Changed. Outside, a new billboard glows above Detroit's skyline. A mother and daughter, side by side, looking forward. So now it's your turn. What do you think? Does justice win? Or is truth just another engine, waiting? For someone brave enough to turn the key, share your thoughts. Tell your story. Speak your truth.